Welcome back to the Lost Tactician, where history's forgotten strategies meet the raw science of survival. Today we're venturing into one of the Cold War's most peculiar mysteries, not about missiles or spies, but about wood. Imagine this, a bridge designed to last mere months during wartime chaos, yet still standing firm 80 years later, defying rot, insects, and the merciless advance of time itself. These weren't monuments built for glory, they were temporary, expendable. So why are they still here, scattered across former Soviet territories like ghosts that refuse to fade? The answer lies buried in classified formulas and desperate ingenuity, a chapter of material science that modern engineers are still trying to decode. Across the vast reaches of what was once Soviet territory, from the Siberian taiga to the marshlands of Belarus, skeletal wooden structures still stand sentinel. Watchtowers lean against time, but refuse to collapse. Barracks that once housed exhausted soldiers now host only wind and memory, their timbers darkened but unbroken. Railway bridges spanning forgotten routes bear the weight of decades they were never engineered to witness. Walk among these relics and you'll notice something unsettling. The wood feels wrong somehow, harder than it should be, darker, almost petrified. Run your hand along a beam and it's smooth, dense as if the grain itself has been transformed into something other than organic matter. These structures were born from wartime desperation. When the Wehrmacht pushed east and partisan warfare erupted in the forests, Soviet engineers faced an impossible mandate: build infrastructure fast, build it everywhere, and do it with whatever materials could be sourced from the land itself. Timber was abundant, labor was expendable, and time was measured in days, not years. Standard practice dictated that such expedient construction would last perhaps 5 to 10 years before succumbing to the inevitable rot, insect infestation, and structural decay that claims all untreated wood. Yet here they stand, defying every expectation, their longevity a puzzle that speaks to secrets embedded in their very cells. The urgency of Soviet wartime construction cannot be overstated. Between 1941 and 1945, millions of structures needed to materialize across territories spanning 11 time zones. Bridges had to be thrown across rivers for advancing columns. Barracks needed to shelter troops through brutal winters. The expectation was simple. These would serve their purpose and then be abandoned or replaced. No one planned for permanence because, honestly, no one expected these structures to outlive the conflict that birthed them. Yet the paradox reveals itself in the mathematics of decay. Untreated pine or birch in the damp forests of Eastern Europe typically shows serious rot within a decade. Exposed to freeze-thaw cycles, to fungal attacks in the humid summers, to the relentless work of wood-boring beetles, organic matter surrenders to entropy. But these Soviet structures have weathered more than 80 years of punishment. Something was done to that wood, something that fundamentally altered its relationship with decomposition. Piecing together the story requires diving into fragmented archives, declassified technical manuals, and interviews with aging Soviet engineers who still remember the formulas they were ordered never to discuss. What emerges is a picture of chemical warfare against nature itself, a strategic application of material science that blended industrial pragmatism with chemical aggression. The backbone of Soviet wood treatment was ferric chloride, a rust-colored compound that Soviet chemists discovered could penetrate deep into wood fibers through high-pressure impregnation. Unlike simple surface coatings, ferric chloride chemically bonded with the cellular structure of the timber, creating a hostile environment for the microorganisms that typically break down wood. The iron ions disrupted enzymatic processes, essentially poisoning the wood against its own decomposition. Simultaneously, creosote, a thick tarry distillate from coal or wood, was applied in generous quantities. This wasn't new technology. Railways had used creosote for decades. Then came the distinctly Soviet innovations. Pine tar, extracted from the endless forests themselves, was mixed with turpentine and applied as a breathable sealant. This traditional material, known for centuries to Russian shipbuilders, created a flexible moisture barrier that prevented water penetration while allowing the wood to breathe, avoiding the internal rot that trapped moisture causes. But perhaps the most ingenious adaptations occurred in the permafrost regions of Siberia. Here, KGB engineers and military architects developed what they called cold preservation, structures designed to leverage frozen ground as a natural preservative. The famous Zubik barrel houses used insulation techniques that kept wood constantly cold and dry, essentially refrigerating the structures against decay. The strategic question haunts these discoveries. Was this intentional genius or beautiful accident? Did Soviet planners deliberately engineer structures to outlast their stated purpose, creating a hidden logistical advantage? The irony deepens when we realize how completely this knowledge vanished. Despite their effectiveness, these treatment methods weren't widely adopted in post-war civilian construction. The formulas remained classified or were simply lost as the Soviet system collapsed. What remains are these ghostly structures themselves, living evidence of a material science that we've since forgotten how to replicate with such simple, brutal efficiency. Today, as we grapple with sustainable building materials and the climate crisis of 2025, these Soviet methods whisper uncomfortable lessons. Modern treated lumber often relies on complex chemical cocktails with environmental costs we're only beginning to understand. Perhaps buried in those classified Soviet manuals are insights we desperately need. A bridge not just across rivers but across time itself, connecting wartime necessity to contemporary innovation. The structures still stand silent witnesses to a conflict that ended generations ago. They remind us that survival, whether of soldiers, civilians, or the buildings that shelter them, often depends on knowledge operating at the intersection of desperation and brilliance. The lost tactician exists to unearth these forgotten strategies, to understand how history's harshest moments forged innovations we've yet to fully appreciate. If this journey into Soviet material science intrigued you, hit that like button and share this video with anyone fascinated by the hidden engineering of warfare. Subscribe to The Lost Tactician for more deep dives into where history, survival, and forgotten knowledge intersect. Drop your theories in the comments. Do you think this permanence was planned or accidental? Until next time, stay tactical, stay curious, and remember, sometimes the most profound secrets are hiding in plain sight, weathered but unbroken, waiting for us to ask the right questions.